this morning? Now, come on, Wisefesters. I know Dallas is an exciting city, but that was weak and unacceptable. Let's try it one more time. How's everybody doing this morning? All right. Much, much better. Well, my name is Commander Jim Murphy. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Afterburner. We're a group of men and women fighter pilots, no kidding, real fighter pilots that travel around the country, actually around the world, talking to leaning forward, cutting-edge organizations and individuals just like you, getting you prepared for one thing and one thing only. And what do you think that is? Combat, right? Because we have a saying at Afterburner that business or trading is combat. Business is combat. And I want to ask each and every one of you a question. What is combat? Combat for me, for us as fighter pilots, is a rapidly changing, challenging, and sometimes hostile environment. I want you to think about your world for a minute. Is your world rapidly changing, challenging, and possibly even hostile, right? So that's why we're here today, because we believe that the tools and the techniques that the Air Force, Navy, and the Marines have taught us as frontline fighter pilots are tools and techniques that you can use to win in your rapidly changing, challenging, and let's hope never hostile environment.
If you ever lose sight of your threats to mission success, you will always lose the fight. Lose sight, lose the fight. It's true flying fighters, and it's true for you in the corporate real estate environment as well. Well, today, we're not only going to give you some tools to help you keep sight of your competition, we're going to teach you a process that will dramatically improve your execution. And we call this process the Afterburner Flawless Execution Model. This is a process that we use every single mission, training, or combat to ensure that we survive, we improve, and we ultimately win. We begin this process with a plan. Folks, flying fighters is complicated, right? So we use a very simple 6-step process to get us from where we are to where we want to be every single time we plan. Once we plan that mission, we must then brief the plan or communicate the plan to the members on our team who are actually going to go out and execute the mission. Now, some companies do a pretty good job of planning, but then they issue marching orders to their troops to start running for some finish line before they've really spelled out where that finish line is located or why they're even headed in that direction. Well, in our world, before every single mission, we hold a briefing where we make sure every single person understands exactly what's expected of them. Everybody's on board the same boat, we're all rowing at the same time, and we know we're all pointed in the same direction. Once we plan the mission and we brief that plan to our team, it's now finally time to go out and execute. Now at Afterburner, we think there's one thing that constantly gets in the way of that nice, flawlessly executed mission, and that's performance-draining task saturation or task overload. I have over 350 switches and dials in my F-16. I might be flying with 7 buddies, going after 16 enemy aircraft. The weather's changing, the terrain's changing. It's obviously very easy for me as a fighter pilot to become task saturated. Now, in my conversations with some of you yesterday up on the floor, I understand that nobody in the corporate real estate industry is ever task saturated, am I right? No? All right. Well, we'll give you some tools to help you maybe minimize some of those effects towards the end here. Once we plan, brief, execute, and we know our results, what does 90% of corporate America like to do next? Guess what? You're right. Nothing. Plan, brief, execute, Miller time. Or, in most cases, it's more like plan, brief, execute, and it's on to putting out the next fire or dealing with the next crisis of the day. Well, not in our world. After every single mission, we call time out and we hold a debrief, where we get together behind closed doors. We hash out what worked and what didn't. And we walk away with 1, 2, maybe even 3 key lessons learned. Things we never want to do again. Things we always want to incorporate into our plan. So that when we plan, brief, execute, debrief, coffee's not kicking in yet, is it? We win on our battlefield. And folks, if you'll embrace this concept, I promise you'll continue to win on your battlefield as well. That's what we're going to focus on for the remainder of today, is the Afterburner Flawless Execution Model. And my goal is to have each of you walk out of here with at least 2 tools that you can take back and apply immediately in your workplace. So let's get started.
Well, if you'll recall in our Flawless Execution Model, it starts with the plan. I'm going to share with you how we as fighter pilots effectively combat mission plan. It's a 6-step process, and it starts with step 1, determining the mission objective. This is a tactical mission objective. It's a quarterly or an annual goal. It's not a strategy. It's not a vision for where Mike wants to bring this team 5 years from now. It's a strategy. It's the next quarter or the next goal. And we give you 3 guidelines to help you when you're determining your mission objective. The first one is it has to be clear. Second one is it has to be measurable. And the third one is it has to be achievable, i.e. believable, and it has to support the overall vision of X-Rite and your strategic goals. Well, let me give you an example. Let's just say, for those of you that are familiar, Storm and Joan Andrew is my commanding officer, okay? Let's say that Storm and Joan comes up to Jack Yo and I, and she says, Cruiser, Jack Yo, I got a mission for you. I want you to go to downtown Baghdad and win the war. Good luck, kick butt, take names. Let me ask you, is that a good mission objective? Absolutely not. Because we're implementers, we're leaders, but we implementers, we need her to tighten that up just a little bit for us. So she comes back and goes, I agree with you, Cruiser. I've got a new mission objective for you. Here it is. There's a vacant building right now. It's the last of the Al-Qaeda regime. I want you and Jack Yo to take 2 F-16s. I want you to go to downtown Kabul. Here's the target coordinates. I want you to each drop 2 2,000-pound laser-guided bombs through the 3rd floor west window of this vacant building and destroy it at 16:03 Zulu plus or minus 5 seconds. Is that a good mission objective? Absolutely. It's clear. Is it measurable? We either get 2 2,000-pound laser-guided bombs to that 3rd floor west window, or we don't. And it's achievable. It's well within the capabilities of Jack Yo and I's performance as well as the aircraft performance. It's a good mission objective. And I know you're all sitting there and you're saying, well, that's really great, Cruiser. I'm going to go back to the Med team or Latin America. I'm going to go back to the Asian Pacific group, and I'm going to say, I know a good mission objective for a U.S. fighter pilot. How does that help me? Well, let me share with you one that I got from Joan, one that you can execute and understand. She talked about it last night. Achieve 105% of your color sales through December 31st, 2005. Is that a good mission objective? Is it clear? Seems clear to me. Is it measurable? Well, you either achieve 105% by December 31st or you don't. And it definitely supports the overall vision of what X-Rite's trying to do. It's a good mission objective. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first step in our planning process, and it's the most difficult to get right. Because if you don't get this right, the rest of the plan is going to be off. Make sure it's clear, measurable, and achievable. That's the key. Well, step 2 is to identify the threat. Now, a lot of companies and a lot of folks don't understand this, so we make it easy. We try to paint a picture for you. Certainly a threat to everybody on the left, right? And I think most of you will recognize those threats on the right. Now, as fighter pilots, we recognize both our internal and external threats, and I've got a question for you. Who can tell me what that is? It's close. Somebody else said it. It's a SAM. That's right. It's a surface-to-air missile. This is actually an SA-2. This thing is longer than a telephone pole. It flies 5 times faster than my aircraft. It's actually more maneuverable, and at the end of it, there's a warhead whose sole purpose is to take my aircraft out of the sky. It is a very, very formidable threat. Now, do you think we'd like to know the known location of our threat or our enemy SAMs? Yes. Actually, we pay people, they're called intelligence officers, to sit down and plot the known location of these enemy SAMs on a map so that we know where they are to go in the country. This is an actual map declassified from Operation Desert Storm. These were the actual surface-to-air missiles that were in country in Iraq prior to us going in on night 1. You can see the missile there located by the red missile, and then there's a ring around it, a yellow ring. That's the fly-out zone, or for us, the no-fly zone of that particular SAM. Well, during Desert Storm, they didn't have just surface-to-air missiles. They had something called AAA, anti-aircraft artillery, huge machine guns that are mounted on trucks and fixed-mounted to shoot our incoming aircraft down. They had something else called MiG fighters. MiG fighters waiting to intercept our incoming aircraft. And to support all this, they had a big radar called a Ground Control Intercept Radar, or GCI. Together, this formed what was known as the Iraqi IADS, or Integrated Air Defense System. You look at that, I think you would have to agree with me, it's a fairly formidable threat, would you not? Now, after only 4 steps, the framework for our plan becomes clear. In our military example, for Mary and her team, they're going to go down and take out that vacant building, that command, control, communication center. That was step 1. We identified the threat. We looked at all those surface-to-air missiles, the AAA and the MiG fighters. Step 3, we identified her support assets. She's got the Wild Weasel, the F-15, the F-117, and also the Harriers and the F-16s. Step 4, she would do her mission at night. That is her strength and the enemy's weakness. So after really only 4 steps in our 6-step process, the plan is fairly clear. Now, step 5 is to prioritize. It's setting the timing as if everything in your mission is going to go perfect. Let me ask you, since when in life does everything ever go perfect? Never, right? Absolutely never. That's why we have step 6. Step 6 is to plan for contingencies, the what-ifs. As fighter pilots, we spend over half of our time talking about the what-ifs, the contingencies. The what if this happens, what are we going to do? As an example, what if Cruiser's the flight lead for this huge strike package going into this unknown territory? I'm leading 20 other aircraft, and I get shot down by a surface-to-air missile. Does Jack Yeo take over as the flight lead, or does my entire team turn back and land to do it another day? What if the weather over the target is so bad that we can't drop these precision-guided munitions on this vacant building? What are we going to do? What if 12 MiG fighters show up on top of our strike package to take us out instead of the 6 that our intelligence officer told us were around? What if for X-Rite? What if at the end of Q1, you're 15% below plan? What are you going to do? What if Greytag rolls out a new product that competes directly with the product that you just recently rolled out, and they're out there stomping you in the marketplace? What if one of your key accounts decides to cancel their forecast for the rest of the year? What are you going to do? See, we have a saying, flying fighters, and we say this: flexibility is the key to air power. And at Afterburner, we take that one step further and we say preparation is the key to flexibility. We do not manage by crisis, ever. We sit in a room just like this, sipping on a Coke in our planning phase and in our briefing phase, and we know exactly what we're going to do when we're merging with our competition at over 2,000 miles an hour. I know exactly what I'm going to do when my competition turns right and goes nose low, or they turn left and go nose high. We do not manage by crisis. If you want to eliminate surprises, you have to plan for change. The ability to adapt and change is truly the key to success.
Well, the first thing I'd like to do is put the group through an audience participation exercise. When I ask the group a question, I'm going to need the entire audience to respond. For example, if I were to say group spell cat, then I want everyone very enthusiastically and in unison to say C-A-T. Let's go ahead and give it a try. Group spell hat. H-A-T. Very good. You just spelled a 3-letter, one-syllable word with minimum difficulty. Congratulations, everybody in here is qualified to fly the F-15, just like Murph. Well, as a Marine-trained fighter pilot, I like to keep things pretty simple. At the end of the day, I want my number of takeoffs to equal my number of landings. Simple goal, right? If they don't, then something's gone wrong. I've probably had to eject out of my aircraft and ride a silk parachute down to the ground. We actually call it the silk letdown. You know, thinking about it, silk's a good word. Group, spell, silk. S-I-L-K. Very good. Group, what does a cow drink? You know, I'm pretty sure where I'm from in Kansas that cows drink water and give milk. But that's okay. I'm going to give you another try. This time when I ask you a question and you know the answer, I simply want you to raise your hand. No shouting it out. Raise your hand when you know what Y-E-S spells. This isn't a trick. Sorry, you had to know what Y-E-S spelled to get in here today. Okay, good. Put your hands down. This time raise your hand, and raise your hand only when you know what E-Y-E-S spells. Okay, Harvard grad over here. The rest of us are thinking about it. You got 2 of them. You're using them right now to look at me. Your eyes. In fact, I think I heard someone over here going, E-S, E-S, lips, what the hell does E-S spell? Well, don't feel too bad, because my daughter brought those home from school the other day to stump old dad, and of course, I got both of them wrong. But I thought that they were pretty good examples of how you become channelized or focused on one particular thing, whether it's silk or YES, the surrounding things tend to break down and become degraded. The video we're about to show you involves 3 highly trained, very experienced cockpit managers who allowed themselves to become channelized on a flight deck of a large commercial airliner, and unfortunately, the end result was a tragedy. The video was produced by the NTSB, or the National Transportation Safety Board. And the gentlemen you're going to see in this video are actual NTSB investigators who are going to be recreating the actions and movements of the ill-fated crew. However, all the audio you will hear, from the beeps and squeaks to the bells and whistles of the cockpit environment, to the actual conversations between the flight crew members themselves, all the audio was extracted directly from the cockpit voice recorder or black box on board the aircraft. The gentleman that you're going to see seated in the left-hand seat, he's the aircraft commander, the captain, the CEO, if you will. He is responsible for the safe and effective operation of the aircraft. The gentleman seated in the right-hand seat is the first officer or co-pilot. It's standard practice in the airline industry for the captain and the first officer to alternate flying portions of a trip to maintain proficiency. On the night in question, the first officer was the flying pilot. Seated behind the first officer turned sideways, you're going to see the flight engineer. And it's his responsibility to monitor a myriad of dials and gauges that tell him the status of the fuel, electrical, and hydraulic systems on board the aircraft. Well, let me bring you up to date on what has happened so far. On December 29th, 1972, Eastern Airlines Flight 401 was on a trip from New York's John F. Kennedy Airport to Miami's International Airport, where it was a warm, crystal clear winter evening. The first officer was flying the aircraft, and when he was 10 miles from Miami International on final approach, he calls for the gear down landing checklist. The captain reaches over and places the landing gear handle to the down position. And when he does that, he's looking for one very important thing to take place. He's looking for 3 green lights up there on the forward instrument panel to illuminate, indicating that the left main landing gear, the right main landing gear, and the nose gear are all down and locked so the aircraft could land safely. Well, when the captain put the gear handle to the down position, he noticed that the main landing gear lights illuminated, but the nose gear light did not illuminate. Captain, being the good leader that he is, reached down, pulled out an emergency procedures checklist, turned to the page which reads, nose gear light fails to illuminate. And lo and behold, it says, put the gear handle back up and then put it back down to give it another try. As the video picks up, you're going to observe that the captain has already put the handle up once, and he's about to put it back down to give it another try. And when he does this, he still only gets 2 of the required 3 green lights. What I want you to pay attention to, though, is how this flight deck crew, this team, starts to become channelized.
Miami Tower to read Eastern 401, just turned on final.
Eastern 401 heavy, continue approach to 9 left.
Let's continue approach, Roger.
I'm gonna try it down one more time.
You want me to test the lights or not?
Yeah, check it.
Watch your seat back. Doug, it could be the light. Could you jiggle the light? It's got to come out a little and then snap in. I'll put them on. Up to 2,000. You want me to fly, Doug?
What frequency did he want us on?
28.6.
I'll talk to him.
All right, approach control Eastern 401. We're right over the airport here and climbing to 2,000 feet. In fact, we've just reached 2,000 feet, and we've got to get the green light on our nose gear.
Eastern 401, roger, turn left heading 360, maintain 2000, vectors to 9 left final.
Left to 360. I think it's above the red one.
Yeah, I can't get it from here.
I can't make it pull out either.
We got pressure?
Yes, sir, all systems.
Put the damn thing on autopilot.
All right.
Captain just said, put the damn thing on autopilot. Well, up to this point, how do you think our crew's doing so far? They're not doing too bad. I mean, everybody has a role that they're performing in the cockpit, right? First officer, the flying pilot's flying the aircraft. The ace, the captain's directing the checklist, making things happen, and the second officer, the flight engineer, is providing mutual support for the 2 up front. Let me ask you another question. You think it's a good or a bad idea to put a major commercial airliner on autopilot 2,000 feet above the ground at night? Believe it or not, it's actually not a bad idea at all. Most of you that flew into San Diego Airport or International here in the last couple of days we're on autopilot at 2,000 feet. However, when the aircraft is on autopilot, it's the flying pilot's responsibility, in this case, the first officer's responsibility, to monitor the status of that aircraft as if he or she were actually flying it. Now, a little bit on the Lockheed L-1011 autopilot. It was designed that if you apply a push or a pull force of more than 5 pounds on the control wheel, the autopilot says, I think the stupid human wants to fly, don't you? Well, yeah, that was a push or a pull of more than 5 pounds, and click, the autopilot is designed to turn off or drop off line. Now, how many of you have ever flown in the front seat of your own aircraft, piloted your own aircraft, or been up front in the cockpit? How many? Okay. Well, most of you know that there's a direct relation in aviation. The harder you push forward on the control wheel, the quicker the houses get bigger out the front windscreen. You pull back, they get smaller, right? That's how aviation works. At this point, the captain said, put the damn thing on autopilot. It's my opinion that the captain just as well could have swiveled around in his seat, looked at his entire crew and said, hey, crew, let's mash that autopilot button and let's forget about this flying thing and let's all three dive in to solve this problem. That's exactly what happens. Watch the first officer, the flying pilot, go, Roger, gets involved with the problem-solving process, reaches forward to jiggle the light bulb, and bumps the control yoke.
See if you can put that light out. Well, you got to push the switch just a little bit further forward. Now turn it to the right a little bit. No, I don't think it's going to fit. Hey, get down there and see if that damn nose wheel's down.
Okay. You got a handkerchief or something so I can get a little better grip on this? Anything I can do with? This damn thing just won't come out, Doug. If I had a pair of pliers, I could cushion it with it.
To hell with this. Go down and see if that red line is lined up down there. Don't screw around with that 20-cent piece of light equipment. Eastern 401, I'll go out west just a little further if we can here and see if we can get this light to come on.
All right.
It's always something. We could have made schedule.
Well, we can tell if the damn gear is down by looking down at the indices.
It's got to be a faulty light. Doug, this damn thing just won't come out.
All right, just leave it there.
Eastern 401, how are things coming along out there?
Okay. 180.
Well, at this point, the flying pilot, the first officer, decides to come up for air and start flying again, and what does he see? Big houses, right? 100 feet. What does he expect to see? 2,000 feet. Think the aircraft could be saved right now? Absolutely. Pull back on the yoke, push the power up, fly away from the ground. But what do you have? You not only have one pilot that's channelized on a 20-cent burnout light bulb, you have an entire crew that's channelized on a fictitious aircraft on autopilot 2,000 feet above the ground instead of the aircraft that they're riding in because they're not flying right now, which is in a slow, insidious descent passing through 100 feet. Ladies and gentlemen, this crew spends the rest of their lives, the next 12 seconds, trying to figure out what has happened instead of reacting to what is happening.
Hey, we did some of the altitude here.
What?
We're still at 2,000, right?
Hey, what's happening here?
Unfortunately, on that ill-fated night, 89 people lost their lives because the cockpit crew of Eastern Flight 401 was channelized on a burnout light bulb. There wasn't a thing wrong with the aircraft.
Why do you think fighter pilots debrief? So we can learn from our mistakes, right? Let me give you an example. Let's say Jackie O's the flight lead of 4 F-16s and we're out on a training mission. Now flying with me today, I have the general of the base with 20 years of flying experience, and we've got 2 brand new lieutenants or new hires. Now as the flight lead, it's my job to oversee the planning. It's my job to brief that plan to the team. It's my job to execute or lead that mission in flight. And we've said we made the commitment to debrief. It's my job to lead the debrief. So we land from the mission, we meet in the debriefing room, and the door closes behind us. Something magical happens. The name tags come off the chest, the rank comes off the shoulders, and we hold what we call a nameless, rankless debrief. So that without fear of reprimand, without fear of retribution or career implications, I can bring out all the mistakes that we made on today's mission. Guess what? If the general of the base made a mistake, I have got to be able to say, hey, number 2, this morning in the brief, I told you to lock your radar at 20 miles, tell me who you had, and take a simulated shot. I didn't hear a word from you all day. What happened? Did you not understand my briefing? Did you have a problem with your radar? Did you just not get the job done? Yeah. You're going to say that to the general. You're going to say something like that to your boss. Okay, I know you're thinking that's career suicide, right? Okay, I'll tell you what. We'll just sweep the general's mistakes under the rug. We'll let him go out. We'll learn those. He can learn those mistakes on his own, maybe fatally in a combat situation tomorrow. But let's face it. Do we really think the general of the base is going to be the one out there on the front lines turning and burning with the enemy, with the competition? No way. But what about our 2 brand new lieutenants, our new hires? What a disservice to those 2 individuals if they were not allowed to benefit from all of the lessons from today's mission. Debrief's over. The door opens back up, and that rank structure goes right back into effect. The general of the base says, Jackie O, jump. I salute smartly. I say, how high, sir, and when do you need it by? Trust me, folks, if this can work in an environment that is so rank conscious that we salute the general's car, whether he's driving it or one of his teenage kids is driving it, it's true. I'm pretty sure it can work in your world as well. I'm going to show you how. We make the mistakes. We fess up to them. We say, I can fix it, and we do it every single time. Please incorporate debriefs into your missions, and when you do, make them nameless and rankless. We have a saying when it comes to the debrief, it's not who's right, it's what's right. And that's exactly the attitude we have to have as we approach our debriefs.